So, in a few days, the WWE is heading over to Chicago, Illinois for Survivor Series 2023, and with an awesome War Games match set, the return of Randy Orton, and rumors of some homeless match from Chicago also possibly returning, the show is officially sold out, and the Allstate Arena is no doubt gonna be rocking. And as a result, Survivor Series finally feels like a big-time show once again. What was once an iconic fall pay-per-view, eventually in the 2010s was on life support, and more often than not, just became a forgettable one. Most of the time, it was obvious that the WWE just did not give a about Survivor Series. Going into 2010, it was actually announced that Survivor Series was gonna be dropped and rebranded into a different pay-per-view, but it was the fans' love for the tradition and the show that saved it and made the company reconsider. But as the decade went along, even the fans began to wonder if Survivor Series was even worth it anymore. So with all this hype going into this year's event, I thought, why not go back to the 2010s, and why not go back to a different time? Go back to the decade where this event had so many ups and downs and relive the shows. And that's exactly what I did. I watched every Survivor Series of the 2010s, and this is what I found. Let's get into it. We begin in 2010, and live from Miami, Florida, it was the first Survivor Series of the decade. And even though this show was very close to being a different pay-per-view, I like to think that back in 2010, Survivor Series still had its aura. I like to think that this was back when the company still took it seriously. But then I saw the match card, and Survivor Series 2010 was not a good start to the decade at all. You know things are cooked when the first wrestler you see on a show is a future criminal who's gonna face 120 years in prison. As someone who didn't remember anything from this show, I was genuinely shocked at how whatever this show was. See, there were some solid matches like Daniel Bryan carrying Ted DiBiase to the one good match of his career, young John Morrison and Sheamus had a solid match, and the 5v5 match of Team Mysterio versus Team Del Rio was actually pretty fun. But yo, ain't nobody buying a show to watch those matches. The issue was, the second half of the show was absolutely garbage. Listen man, when a 43-year-old Kane as world champion versus Edge is your second biggest match of the night, it ain't looking too good, partner. Edge versus Kane for the world title might genuinely be the most forgettable world title match in WWE history. I had zero recollection of this match, and you know what? That was for the best. Whoever booked this match needs to be shot. Now I'm dead serious, because Edge versus Kane in a slow-ass match where half the match involves them just doing nothing, that itself is a war crime, but this match might have the worst ending I have seen for a big time match in my life. Around 10 minutes into the match, yes 10 minutes into the match, Edge slips out of a tombstone and out of nowhere hits a spear, and both men are laid out and they're down like they had some next epic 5-star match. Mind you, it is the first finisher of the match, and while they're down, the referee just starts counting. Everyone is like, what the hell is going on? But apparently Edge's arm ever so slightly being on Kane's chest is a pin now, so 1, 2, 3, the referee counts it, Edge's music hits, and oh my god, Edge has won the world title. The crowd finally comes alive, they are shocked, they're surprised, and even I was. It's like, okay, sure, fine, it could have been worse. At least there was a title change, it's fine. But no, it was worse, because these idiots decided to do an even stupider finish than what we saw. See, turns out Kane also had his arm ever so slightly on Edge's chest, so when the referee counted, he was counting for both men. Yo, what kind of pin is this? 1, 2, 3, turns out this shitty match was actually a draw. What the hell were these idiots thinking? First of all, it's Edge versus Kane, that itself is just not it. Second, out of every ending, if you're gonna do a draw, this is what you think of? Kane walks out champion. I lost all my brain cells and it hadn't even been 2 hours yet. And to follow up this masterpiece, they gave us Heath Slater and Justin Gabriel taking on Santino Marella and Vladimir Kozlov.
Hey bro, come on now, dawg. Come on, man.
Now, the main event of this show was the only thing people cared about. The entire show was built up for the main event, which was Nexus leader Wade Barrett taking on Randy Orton for the title with John Cena as the referee. And the stipulation was, if Wade Barrett won this match, Cena would be freed from Nexus, but if Randy Orton had won the match, Cena would be fired from the WWE. Cena's destiny was in his own hands, and this was honestly a pretty cool stipulation, and this was really hype going into it because everyone expected and everyone wanted Wade Barrett to become the champion. This was supposed to be the night where the Nexus storyline was finally redeemed and made right again, and despite the rest of the show not being anything special, this was a great idea for a main event. And the ending of Cena costing Wade the title and being fired from the company was a huge twist at the time. Nobody saw this coming, and it's actually so funny watching this back and seeing how dramatic they were with Cena leaving. This man pulled an Undertaker from WrestleMania 7 years earlier. You would think that Cena was never ever gonna show his face again the way he left here this night. Cena looked like he was about to cry, leaving his gear in the ring, saying goodbye to the crowd. The commentators were basically crying and pleading him not to go. They did everything they could to make it seem like he might actually be off TV for a while, and it was pretty well done, and it was really fun to watch again. But the thing is, the idiot was on Raw the very next night. Oh my god, no, definitely not a good start to the decade. 4 out of 10. We move on to 2011, and live from Madison Square Garden for the third time ever, it was Survivor Series. And yo, this is a show I remember vividly. If there was ever a show that the company could have booked to make it feel like Survivor Series was back, it was this one. The Rock was back and was wrestling for the first time in 7 years and teaming up with John Cena. It was tagged as never before, never again, and you already know I begged my mom to order this one. The MSG crowd was on fire all night, everything was solid, and the whole show just breezes by. But what makes this show so special are the two main events. CM Punk finally becoming champion after cementing himself as a main eventer in 2011 in the world's most famous arena against Del Rio was special. From the Howard Finkel introduction that made it feel like we were in the Garden in the 80s to just how badly the fans wanted Punk to win, it was legendary. And to top it all off, Punk won by hitting the Randy Savage elbow just months after he passed away into the Anaconda Vice. He won the title, and yo, I'm not even the biggest CM Punk fan, but you gotta love this moment. One of the loudest pops you'll ever hear for someone winning a title. He jumped into the crowd, didn't break anything this time, and the rest was history. And the main event in my eyes was just as special. The Rock coming back to team up with Cena, what more can I say? First match in 7 years, he got the crazy crowd reaction, and it was all eyes on The Rock. It was like, was he gonna be the same? Was he gonna have ring rust? Does he still have it in him? Was he still The Rock? And yo, I'll never forget my jaw being on the floor, seeing this maniac go in the ring and being so fast, so quick, so agile. You would think this guy snorted all the coke in Miami before this match because he legit looked better than ever. The Rock was back. Him and Cena clapped Miz and Truth, won the match. It was awesome, a really fun night to be a wrestling fan, and it ended with The Rock hitting the rock bottom on Cena, continuing the setup to Mania. This was so fun to watch again, and this was really a show where Survivor Series felt special again. 8 out of 10. Survivor Series 2012 live from Indiana was definitely a little snap back to reality after last year's show. Let's be honest, there is only one thing that people remember from this show, and it's not David Otunga wrestling, it's the debut of The Shield. This show is weird because it's not a bad show whatsoever, and most of the matches are pretty decent quality, but back then you just expected more from what was supposed to be a top 4 show. See, Sheamus vs Big Show ending in a DQ and Cesaro vs R-Truth, they aren't exactly burning the house down, but it wasn't bad. The main event of CM Punk defending his title against Cena and Ryback, see, that was a banger. Heel Punk in his prime, slimy as he could possibly be. Cena was Cena, and this was before the steroids made Ryback mentally challenged. They did in fact tear the house down, and as you know, this match only gets better with age because it ends with the Shield making their debut, just destroying everything in sight and setting in motion the next generation of the company. One of the best and most impactful debuts of all time after a great main event. Overall, this show is nothing to write home about. It's not bad, it's not amazing, it's solid. 6 out of 10. And you might say, hey Pav, I think you're being extra nice to this show. And you know what, you're probably right, because in 2013, ladies and gentlemen, to follow this up, we got the most infamous Survivor Series of all time. I'm sorry, Bret Hart. Survivor Series 2013 headlined by Randy Orton versus The Big Show. Do I even need to say anything else? This is arguably the worst Survivor Series of all time, which features one of the worst main events of any pay-per-view of all time. And watching this back 10 years later, yo, this actually gave me depression. Not only is this one of the worst shows in terms of quality, this was the lowest bought Survivor Series ever, doing 180,000 buys. Gee, I wonder why. Yo, what kind of drugs do you have to be on to book a main event like this? And the fact that it even did 180,000 buys, that itself is too much. How did 180,000 people spend their hard-earned money to watch Big Show versus Randy Orton and John Cena versus Alberto Del Rio? Yo, this was a pay-per-view that once had importance. We used to be a proper country. This was once a top 4 pay-per-view of the year that had classics. Now they were just throwing a big fat guy into the main event because he cried on Raw a few weeks ago. Yo, look at this card, okay? Look at this shit. Big E versus Curtis Axel. Mark Henry versus Ryback. A 7v7 women's elimination match that had 12 eliminations in 12 minutes where women were out here getting eliminated by drop kicks and turnbuckles. How do you get eliminated by a turnbuckle? Cena and Del Rio had a match for 18 minutes because yay, that's what we want, and the 2 most popular wrestlers on the card, let's just put them in a random tag team match because we don't want them in the main event scene. The fact that this happened actually blows my mind. The fact that they thought the Big Show versus Randy Orton was a viable main event is insane. These really were the dark ages, and this showed just how little they thought of Survivor Series. 2 out of 10. Absolutely horrible. Just please don't ever watch this. We move on to 2014. Hey yo, you thought Survivor Series 2012 was a one-match show? Ladies and gentlemen, 2014's edition of this event might genuinely be the biggest one-match show ever. I cannot think of a show off the top of my head that was saved by the main event more than this one. I challenge you in the comments to drop a show that was saved by the main event more than this one. When people think of this show, like, they actually get the warm and fuzzies. They think of how fun this show was, but yo, let me tell you, it wasn't because Adam Rose was running around with the bunny or Team Natalia versus Team Paige. It was the main event and only the main event. Team Cena versus Team Authority is a classic in every single way. The drama, the action, the hype, the twist, it is hard to find anything wrong with this match. And yo, all I know is Vince McMahon will not be seeing heaven for how he mishandled Dolph Ziggler after this match. Among other things, because Dolph, as we know, dropped a legendary performance on this night. He single-handedly made this match into a classic, from his super kicks to never dying to just carrying the team on his back, hell, carrying the show on his back. This should have been the night he became a main eventer. And yo, them having Cena get eliminated halfway into the match was genius. One of the best booking decisions they could have done. You eliminate Super Cena 20 minutes into a 40-minute match, and then you have Dolph Ziggler just clutch a 3v1. It doesn't get more dramatic and more fun than that. And of course, the Sting debut at the end that shocked the world just made it into a certified classic. 10 out of 10, true classic, put this match in the Hall of Fame, single-handedly saved this show. This match alone, 9 years later, has people looking back at the show fondly. That's how good it was. A show that would have been worse than 2013 was saved. 1 out of 10, but with the main event, 5 out of 10. Survivor Series 2015. Do we have to? I present to you the most average event of them all. During this little journey, I got to watch an amazing show, I got to watch a one-man show, a really bad show, and now I had to sit here and watch the most average, most whatever show on the list. The most memorable thing about this show was the fact that ISIS almost blew it up. Just a few days before the show, the FBI released a statement regarding a possible ISIS threat for the event, and it's like, damn, even ISIS hated 2015 Roman Reigns. This show just sucks, bro. It was marketed as the 25th anniversary of The Undertaker, and yeah, he had one badass entrance on this night and then proceeded to have the most whatever meaningless 10-minute tag match with his brother. And other than that, it featured a one-night tournament for the vacant world title, which on paper seems really cool, but Roman Reigns wins, none of the matches were special, and the final match of Dean versus Roman, a pretty big time match, it was just 9 minutes long and ended quickly with Roman Reigns winning. And then Sheamus cashes in and he just looks so ugly at this time, like what the hell is this? So he cashes in, he becomes world champion, and it's like, how does the show end with the world champion being someone even less interesting than 2015 Roman Reigns? A plot twist just for the sake of a plot twist, just a boring, bad show, not good. 3.5 out of 10. Next up, Survivor Series 2016, the one and only Survivor Series I have ever attended. Survivor Series this year finally had a purpose again. It was SmackDown versus Raw, and the main event was a big time match that was called Fantasy Warfare. Yo, let's be honest, this was a fun show. The men's SmackDown vs. Raw match from the show is straight up awesome. If you ever wanted to see a WWE All-Star type match, this was it. All the top hitters of 2016 in one match, just going crazy. 52 minutes, yes, 52 minutes, and there was not one moment where I was bored, in person or watching it all these years later. I mean, how can you be bored? You got the Shield reuniting, Shane McMahon getting absolutely murdered, RKOs everywhere, and Bray and Randy coming clutch and winning it at the end. This match was awesome, and this is really a template to how a SmackDown vs. Raw match should be. The best of the best, the heavy hitters tweaking, and just non-stop action. And the main event, I mean, yo, what do I even have to say? It's a match that is so fascinating. Brock Lesnar versus Goldberg. Brock Lesnar, the Demon, losing in 1 minute and 29 seconds in one of the most surreal and shocking moments I can remember. No one thought this would ever happen. No one thought anything like this would ever happen, let alone against a old retired Goldberg. But it did, and it was such a fun moment, and it's such a fun show to go back to. And yeah, maybe I'm biased because I was there, but hey, I had a good time watching it. It's a show that just flies by, especially when half of the show is just the last 2 matches, and we finally reached a point in the journey where the women finally got some respect and were able to put on a solid match. Easily for me, a 7 out of 10. Next up, Survivor Series 2017. We made it out the mud, we finally eating again, and this was a great show. For the longest time, I always thought this show sucked because I remember the main event being absolute garbage, but color me surprised because this show had some bangers. The opening match was a match I had totally forgotten about. When the show started and I realized the Shield had a match against the New Day, I was just sitting there like, wait, what? But nah, it was the Shield versus the New Day 6-man tag match, and the 2 of the best factions of the 2010s went out there and tweaked. Everyone always talks about the Shield versus the Wyatts, as they should, but this match needs some more praise because it is almost up there. The New Day were straight killers in this match, thankfully. No fun and games, they were straight up hostile. The Shield was back, and for a solid 20 minutes, they went off, and by the end, I was just sitting there confused on why the hell don't I remember this? Out of all the shows I watched, this was 100% the best forgotten match of them all. Maybe it's just me who forgot about this, I don't know, but this really caught me lacking. And the rest of the show continued to leave me shook. The Bar versus the Usos was what you expect with all that talent in the ring. Charlotte versus Prime Alexa Bliss before she became Shaq in a Celtics jersey was solid, and the match that we all thought was impossible just 2 years prior to this absolutely delivered in every way. It's Brock Lesnar versus AJ Styles. I love this match, you love this match, everyone loves this match. Everyone back in 2017 expected Brock to just win in 5 minutes. The fact that we were even getting this match was cool enough, but realistically we knew it was going to be a bunch of suplexes, F5, and let's go home. But nah, Lesnar did kill AJ for a solid 10 minutes and it was brutal, but just when you thought it was wraps, AJ actually fought back and what we all hoped for actually happened. Next thing you know, flying forearms everywhere, springboards, 450s, AJ even had Lesnar in a submission and we had a fight. This match had the crowd going wild because somehow, some way, they made it seem like AJ Styles had a chance, like he could win, or at the very least compete with the guy who at this point had destroyed everyone. This is no doubt the best singles match in this journey so far, and it was an absolutely beautiful match and it was a treat to watch all over again. If that match had closed out the show, this would have been one of the best Survivor Series in a long time. This would have been a pay-per-view that was considered top tier, but the issue was, they didn't. Sadly, these idiots proceeded to have one of the worst Survivor Series tag team matches as the main event. I hate this main event. I hated it back in 2017. I hate it now. This main event is one of the stupidest matches I have seen in my life. This makes Kane versus Edge look like a 5-star classic. To follow up last year's match, they ran it back one more time. SmackDown versus Raw, and this time they had some even more crazy star power. John Cena, Randy Orton, Triple H, Kurt Angle, Nakamura, Finn Balor, Samoa Joe, to name a few. And after last year's match, there were some insane expectations for this. We thought we were gonna get something legendary, or at the very least something good, right? With all that talent, that's pretty warranted. But nah, instead it was a showcase match for Shane McMahon and Triple H. Cena got eliminated after taking like 2 moves. Nakamura at this point, who was red hot, was the first one to get eliminated, and then beside all of that, at the end of the match, Triple H hit his own teammate Kurt Angle with a pedigree, turned on Kurt, then let Shane pin and eliminate Kurt, just to proceed to then eliminate Shane himself and win the match anyway. Yo, what the hell was this? No, like really, what was this? This was a bigger terrorist attack than anything ISIS could have done. How do you have someone turn on their partner in some crazy twist and then they still go full Superman and win the match for their partner anyway when his partner's career's on the line? And wait, why the f was Shane McMahon the last one standing for Team SmackDown? Nah, this main event was nasty work and I absolutely despise it, and it's solely responsible for me thinking this show was bad. That's how garbage the main event was. But looking back at it, if you pretend that this main event never happened, Survivor Series 2017 is low-key one of the best of the decade, 7 out of 10. Survivor Series 2018. Now this is actually a super solid show, and that is crazy because this show took place just 3 months after this debacle. There is not a single bad match on this show, and to my surprise, that is a very weird thing to say because This is 2018 we're talking about. The company wasn't doing its best at this point, but top to bottom, this is a great watch. SmackDown vs. Raw was delegated to more of a mid-card type beat, but still was pretty good. Of course, Shane McMahon had to be in there, and it was fascinating to see how much the mid-card improved over the years. We really went from Ryback versus Mark Henry to just great matches top down, and one of the matches that really was just awesome to watch was Ronda Rousey versus Charlotte Flair. This match took place just 11 months into Ronda's career, and her and Charlotte went off. This was supposed to be a tease for a future banger between these two. Turns out this was the banger the whole time. It did not seem like these two hated each other, and it really showed in this match. And what made the match even better was when the match started, the fans were chanting for Becky Lynch, but by the end they were chanting "This is awesome." Ronda was bleeding from her mouth, Charlotte was at her best, Ronda was in her prime as a wrestler, and even though it ended as a DQ, this was great. These women just still had their aura back then, and they delivered in every way. Charlotte attacking Ronda after the match was brutal, like legit brutal. By the end, Charlotte was a crazy woman. She had snapped and the crowd loved it. It's kind of sad though, because this was such a money match and this was supposed to set up their future bangers, but they were never able to replicate this magic ever again. But here, holy, no, this was good. And the main event, this was just as good as last year's. How do you follow up Brock Lesnar versus AJ Styles? How about the dream match that people have been wanting for years? Daniel Bryan versus Brock Lesnar, and I low-key like this match even more than the AJ one. Just slightly. Heel Bryan up against Brock Lesnar, going face to face, showing no fear, taking all of Lesnar's offense and going back and trying to break Lesnar's fingers, break his head, just do anything he could. What more could you want? Lesnar was out here selling like Bryan was one of the greatest wrestlers ever despite his size. Oh wait, he is. And Lesnar did his best to make this match into an awesome match. Bryan was just a savage in this, and he stood up to Lesnar in every way. We knew he was never gonna win deep down, but the fact that he almost made him tap out was special enough. Lesnar got the win here in an awesome match, technically, but yo, Bryan got the moral victory if I've ever seen a moral victory. Great match, great show. Somehow, someway, Survivor Series 2018 was actually good and actually delivered. Who would have thunk it? In the comments down below, let me know, which do you prefer, Styles versus Lesnar or Bryan versus Lesnar? But overall, 7.5 out of 10. And last but not least, Survivor Series 2019. This was a show that back in 2019 got a lot of praise, and it still holds up well. What was going to be just another SmackDown vs. Raw show ended up featuring NXT, all because of travel delays from Saudi Arabia. And as a result, watching this show all these years later, this is a trip. The first match of the night was the women's match, and all you see is Team NXT, and you see Bianca, Rhea, and Io all before they're on the main roster, before any WrestleMania main event, before all the titles, and it's like, damn, because they got the opportunity here and they really showed out. This was the moment where they really put everyone on notice and kind of cemented that they were going to be big stars going into the future. But yeah, overall, this show was just a trip. Like, Roderick Strong beat AJ Styles and Nakamura. He isn't even in the company anymore. There was a whole NXT title match, which was awesome, by the way, but Adam Cole ain't in the company anymore. The men's tag, which was supposed to showcase the future, had Keith Lee come off as someone who's going to be one of the biggest stars in the company. Matt Riddle came off as that guy. Roman Reigns was in the match and he was a sole survivor, but this was back when he was still the good guy who all the fans booed and he looked so cringe. This Roman Reigns is now definitely dead. And in the same match, which was supposed to showcase the future, Walter aka Gunta was the first man pinned in the match. This show was fascinating because it's crazy how much can change in just 4 years, but also see who the company views as next stars and who they don't, and just the difference of what really happens. A really solid show, top to bottom, a trip in every way, and something that everyone I feel like should go back and watch just to see how much of a difference there is in everything. The only complaint was though, the show was one, way too long, and second, there was no reason for the women's match to be the main event. Oh, and Brock and Ray for the title, amazing 7 minutes. I still think Ray should have won the title here. I don't care if Brock came back the next night and killed Rey Mysterio. Rey Mysterio should have been champion, even just for a day. This was a solid show, another 7 out of 10, and boom, there you go. I watched every Survivor Series of the 2010s, and that was very interesting to say the least. The ups and downs were insane, and seeing the company change when I do these type of videos is always fun, but what really shook me about this is how much they flip-flop. 1 year Survivor Series actually means something, and for a few years it doesn't, then it loses identity, and then it has one. It was all over the place. It's crazy how Survivor Series went from being such an iconic show in the 90s and 2000s to almost then being cancelled in 2010 and was basically just another show, to 2011 it once again feeling like one of the most important shows of the year, so then by 2012 it was clear they didn't really care that much anymore. 13 was trash, 14 was saved by one match, 15 was so boring. Eventually Survivor Series had an identity crisis. And I'll say this, it is clear, it is obvious that from 2016 to 2019 having SmackDown vs Raw definitely saved the show, it no doubt did, but I don't know. It still felt like Survivor Series could always have been so much more than that, because yeah, SmackDown vs Raw makes for a good show, but in the overall and grand scheme of things, it never means anything. Back in the day, sometimes Survivor Series would outsell SummerSlam, but in the 2010s, it was clear that they did not care about this show. But that brings me now to 2023, and I think War Games is a perfect tradition for Survivor Series going forward, and it really helps revitalize the event. It finally has an identity again, it finally has a purpose that's more than just SmackDown vs Raw for one night for no reason. But yeah, it does bring a smile to my face because once upon a time this event meant something, and it finally feels like it does once again. I personally can't wait for Saturday, I can't wait for War Games, I can't wait for it all. I hope you guys enjoyed this trip down memory lane. This was me watching every Survivor Series of the 2010s and my thoughts and my reactions. I really hope you guys enjoyed. It's your boy Pav, aka Wrestling Ifs. I will see you guys soon with the next one very soon. Until then though, take it easy. Later guys.